Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Carol is off tonight because of the weather and the bad roads. It's the one thing we just can't seem to get away from. So let's go right to Michael Coates for a first look at what we can expect tonight and tomorrow.
Well, Jay, we're getting hit with a good little last hurrah of wet weather. Now, this is pretty much the last strongest punch that we're seeing with this storm system. Rain and snow showers, which will continue tonight into the overnight hours. We're picking up mostly rain at this hour on Viper radar, with snow into the higher elevations, some heavy snow in around the Teton Pass and around the Grand Tetons. But we actually are expecting to see, again, the worst of it tonight, as most of us are going to bed, and then a lot of the stuff will be drying up as we head through tomorrow afternoon. Winter weather advisories for the Snake River Plain, winter storm warnings for the mountains surrounding the Snake River Plain. All of this expires tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. But what's not expiring is the flood warning, because temperatures tomorrow are still going to be well above freezing in the afternoon. And we're going to be looking for high flooding potential. Right now, 34 Idaho Falls, 36 Pocatello, 30 Jackson, 27 in Salmon, 25 in Island Park, 37 for Boise. And the wind speeds, look at this, sustained wind speeds at 29 miles an hour in Idaho Falls, 18-mile-an-hour winds in Pocatello. When I come back, I'll talk more about the dropping temperatures for the weekend. Jay.
All right, thank you, Michael. And with conditions the way they have been all day, it's no surprise that we have several road closures around the area. U.S. Highway 32 has been closed from Ashton to Teutonia. Highway 33 from Newdale to Teutonia is also closed, and Highway 34 from Soda Springs to the Wyoming line has been closed as well. In the early morning hours tonight, Teton Pass will also be closed. That closure starts at 3 a.m. so crews can do avalanche control. Several other roads in Grand Teton National Park were closed earlier today because of weather conditions. You can find the details on our website at localnews8.com. You know, all the snow these last few weeks has workers around the state working lots of overtime to keep the roads clear. For the city of Blackfoot, there have been a lot of complaints. Local News 8's Febin Kasahun went along for a ride with one plow driver to find out how things are actually going, and she says she gained a new perspective and appreciation for them and their job.
Old Man Winter isn't catching a break, especially for us in eastern Idaho. We haven't had this much snow for a while, and what some people are forgetting is it's hard work clearing the streets. I decided to see for myself just how hard are our city plowers working.
We usually come in at 1 o'clock in the morning and we plow the streets of Blackfoot until we're done. It's usually 10, sometimes 1 o'clock, and usually our day starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, but when we got to plow, it starts at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning.
That's Brandon Whitworth. He says he's been working as a snowplow driver for about 5 to 6 years. With only a handful of guys working as a snowplow driver, he says it's an extensive job.
There's 7 of us that work for the street department. We have our own routes that we do. It's a pretty big route, so we just go until we get it done.
Their protocol is 3 to 4 inches of snow and rising. When it snows more than that, just like last night, they work 12-hour shifts, non-stop and no breaks.
We're tag teaming it today to get our main routes done. We won't do our residential around houses, we won't have time for that.
Even with the tag team, Brandon says it's still a 12-hour shift. Recently, the city of Blackfoot has had numerous complaints about snowplows. Brandon adds that it's mostly with people who have parked along the streets being snowed in.
You know, we're just doing our job. Our plows only are directional, so everything goes to the right, and that's the best we can do. We just open up the roads.
Now, after Febin took her ride with Brandon, we got notice that the city of Blackfoot has issued a snow removal proclamation. So starting next Tuesday, the city is asking people not to park on the streets east of the railroad tracks between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. And then on Wednesday of next week, the city says to avoid parking on streets west of the railroad tracks between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. They said people will be allowed to park in the alleys for these 2 days. And the city is also suspending the rule of clearing sidewalks, as city crews could be placing snow on them. Vehicles not moved during these times could be towed at the owner's expense if they're left in the street. There are exclusions for the downtown area. You can find all the details on this at localnews8.com. And as the snow keeps coming, so do the snow days at schools all across Idaho. After several districts have canceled classes multiple days in a row, we decided to check on local policy for this issue. We spoke with officials at Pocatello Chubbuck School District about the situation. This year has been kind of an odd one for them, since it's the first time snow days have been declared at all since 2012. For schools, the big rule is student safety, but they also have school time requirements they have to meet. If problems continue, districts may have to extend the school year or school hours.
We could extend the school day, for instance, if we needed more time, or we could look at possibly taking a professional development day or a parent-teacher conference day and making it an instructional day.
If the cancellations continue, the district will have to consider those other options, but right now the district says schedules are fine, no adjustments necessary yet. More information on required instructional hours and snow day protocol is on our website at localnews8.com. Now, so far tonight, we've only heard from one school district announcing a closure for tomorrow. Fremont Joint County School District says they will cancel classes Wednesday because of the inclement weather. While Blackfoot continues to get its roads clear, Idaho Falls has tried to keep up with it, but at a very hefty cost. All the snow work has plowed right through the snow budget. City officials in Idaho Falls say they have already spent about 80% of their overall snow budget. That's 80% of a $1.1 million budget. Much of that money has gone into the contract work the city has for snow removal.
That we track essentially for contract snow removal is about $525,000. Of that, as of last week, we had spent about $400,000 of that budget.
Another major concern is the number of overtime hours employees have racked up since snowfall started. Those numbers and how they will affect the budget haven't been calculated yet. Frederickson says because we've had more snow already this year than in the past 5 years, they're concerned that they won't be able to stay within the budget. He says city council members are updated bi-weekly regarding the budget. In your Consumer Watch this evening, headlights on cars. It's something we should use anytime we drive at night or in difficult conditions. In the coming years, you're going to start to see major changes in the quality of those headlights on new cars. Local News 8's Chris Nessman is live in Idaho Falls. Now, Chris, starting this year, 2017, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety now takes headlight quality into account when deciding which cars are the safest. So how will that affect consumers?
Yeah, Todd, a lot of people are going to start to see changes as far as the type of headlight on the newer vehicles. The IIHS is the major third-party group that tests the safety of American vehicles, and every year they test them and now they are including headlights in those tests, and a lot of consumers pay attention to what they say. So if a car company wants to get more customers, they're going to pay attention to what the IIHS says, and they're going to follow what they can to make a top safety pick rating. When you think of safety features on cars, airbags and seatbelts typically come to mind. Now that the IIHS tests them for automotive safety ratings, headlights are just one more thing consumers can look at when hunting for a new safe car.
To be blunt with you, it is something that it should be a consideration, a major consideration is your visibility of driving the car at night.
The new ratings look into several factors, including how far ahead low and high beams travel and how much the road is lit up relative to the darkness.
As you can tell by driving around tonight, even the lines on the roads are difficult to see, and if you can get the light in the right area, you can tell what lane you're supposed to be even traveling in.
The new test also measures how much glare headlights give to oncoming traffic and what direction they shine. Powerful lights aren't very safe if they blind other oncoming drivers. At Teton Toyota, we lined up an older car with a traditional halogen light with a new Corolla that had LEDs. The difference was easily apparent. The new car lit up what was ahead of it significantly better than the older car. For consumers, the obvious benefit is being able to see what's in front of you. That alone has the potential to help avoid accidents and save you money on car insurance.
But right now there's no discount for it. But I mean, obviously if you can have a better record or be a safer driver, then it's going to save you money that way.
While newer cars typically have much better headlights than the older ones, if you do happen to have more of the older traditional halogen lights, there are a couple things you can do to improve it. Simply cleaning off the lens, defogging it, and adjusting the angle of your beam to make sure it's exactly where it should be can honestly make a big difference on what you see at night. Reporting live in Idaho Falls, I'm Chris Nestman.
All right, thanks, Chris. Something we don't often think of is the headlights. Teton Toyota, which helped us out in this story, said many of the newer model cars come standard with the better headlights, meaning consumers won't have to pay extra money to get the safety features they want. The man who pleaded guilty to killing a popular Blackfoot businessman last year was sentenced today. Dylan Grant Gibson will spend at least 3 years in prison and up to 15 years for vehicular manslaughter. In June of last year, Gibson crashed into the home of William Hong, causing a fire that killed Hong. Gibson has admitted he was under the influence of alcohol or drugs at the time of the crash. Idaho lawmakers got right to work today introducing the first bill of the session. Lawmakers want to clarify the language of the newly adopted constitutional amendment to ease legal concerns raised by Idaho's top elected officials. The first bill, introduced in the legislature's new season today, would define a brief clause in the constitutional amendment that expanded the Idaho legislature's power. The amendment, which voters approved in November, included language allowing lawmakers to not only reject rules created by the executive branch agencies, but also tweak them without the governor's approval. Governor Otter and Attorney General Lawrence Wasden have both warned that the constitutional amendment contains legally ambiguous wording. The bill must now go before a legislative hearing, but it has not yet been scheduled. In our national news tonight, Dylan Roof has been sentenced to death by a jury for shooting and killing 9 black churchgoers in a racially motivated attack. The admitted racist and convicted murderer acted as his own attorney in the sentencing phase. Speaking to the jury, he did not offer apologies and refused to argue that he was insane back in June of 2015 when he walked into a Bible study and killed 9 African-American churchgoers. Family members of the victims were there today at the sentencing.
Today we had justice for my sister. This is a very hollow victory because my sister's still gone.
The judge will formally sentence Roof tomorrow morning. Roof also faces a state trial in which he could face the death penalty once again. President Obama is saying farewell tonight. He traveled to his adopted hometown of Chicago for his big goodbye. ABC's Kenneth Moten is there.
President Barack Obama's farewell. Hello, Chicago. It's good to be home. The 44th president, the first family, Vice President Joe Biden and his wife, surrounded by thousands of supporters in the place where it began, Chicago.
Now, this is where I learned that change only happens when ordinary people get involved and they get engaged and they come together to demand it.
The nation's first black president spoke of the historic nature of his presidency and the work of his administration, bringing the country back from recession, foreign policy, health care.
America is a better, stronger place than it was when we started.
Addressing income inequality, terrorism, and other threats to American democracy.
We all have to start with the premise that each of our fellow citizens loves this country just as much as we do.
The president's emotional moment, speaking about the first daughters and First Lady Michelle Obama.
You made the White House a place that belongs to everybody.
The president's message to supporters, a thank you, but also a call to action.
I'm asking you to believe, not in my ability to bring about change, but in yours.
Trying to leave office the way he entered it, on a wave of hope.
Yes, we can. Yes, we did. Yes, we can. Thank you.
For these supporters, a big after party here at McCormick Place for President Obama, his final trip on Air Force One. Kenneth Moten, ABC News, Chicago.
President Obama is not expected to leave Washington before the inauguration again next week. More snow and cold on the way. We'll be right back with the full forecast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. We are at the Capitol today in one of the conference rooms that is usually very busy during the session. It's appropriate because this room is where weekly all the county officials from across the state meet. The treasurers, the recorders, the assessors, the commissioners, the sheriffs, to talk with legislators about pending legislation to make sure that the policies the state makes does not have a crippling effect on the counties or you as its citizens. So That's the topic of our show today, to see how important this relationship is between county elected officials and state legislators. We're going to start by trying to understand the mechanics of the process. We will do that with this week's tutorial with Brigham Larsen.
Thanks, Chad. Over the course of the next few months, if you visit your county commission offices, or almost any other office at your county seat for that matter, you might find them oddly empty. But I can tell you with all honesty, that is a good thing. From January through the start of March, many of your county officials will be finding their way over and over again to Salt Lake City and Capitol Hill as the Utah legislative season moves forward. But don't worry, it isn't parties or dinners bringing them, it's hard work to make sure that the legislature knows best how to help your local counties. To understand why this is important, let's first learn what it is that the legislature does. The Utah legislature consists of two bodies, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Together, these two bodies of government work together to draft and approve new laws, ordinances, and budgets. What makes the Utah legislature different from other legislatures across the country is two simple but very important details. Speaker of the House, Greg Hughes, explained it to me when I met with him earlier this month.
Our state legislature has been, in our state constitution, we have 45 calendar days. 45 calendar days actually includes Saturday and Sunday, but we don't really come in on those days. So we really have about 31 working days to review bills, House and Senate, and in committees as well as on the floor, and then put our whole state budget together. And so we are on a very fast pace. It's one of the shortest general sessions of any state in America.
Even the governor says the buzz on the Hill is because of this busy season.
It's a beehive of activity, no pun intended at the beehive state, but a lot of things will happen. I know that I hear a myriad of pieces of legislation being talked about, over 1,200 pieces. I expect they'll pass around 500.
The second factor ties in with the first. The senators and representatives are part-time legislators. These men and women, while making sure laws are written and passed, still have to eke out an existence just like you or I. They've got jobs and businesses to get back to, which motivates them to keep on pace and wrap up a session. It also means that they know the struggles their communities are facing because they are there on the ground right along with you. But how does all of that tie back to county leadership? Well, on some level, each and every law that is written and considered by lawmakers on Capitol Hill will have an effect on your county. If that change is to Medicaid in Utah, you can count on the county needing to step in and help to administer those changes. If a state-level law is established, such as new drinking limits, it's going to fall on the sheriff to get involved and help enforce those laws. To make sure that the right changes are made and the county's concerns are heard, state lawmakers rely on county leaders like commissioners to step up and make their voices heard. That's why on any given day, most, if not all, of a county's leadership can be found in Salt Lake talking with legislators, attending meetings, and giving testimony on how a new law will affect their county. So now you know why you might find your county offices empty during the beginning months of a year. To help us understand better how counties and the legislature work together, we'll be right back with our panel of experts. For the county seat, I'm Brigham Larsen.
Welcome back to the county seat. Today we are answering the question, why do county officials spend so much time at the legislature where there are other elected officials doing the business of the state? Well, we're going to continue that conversation and answer the questions on how important it is for county officials to be engaged with the legislature. To make sure both sides are represented, joining us today is the sheriff from Weber County, Terry Thompson. We have Representative Lee Perry, District 29 in northern Utah, from the House of Representatives here at the legislature, and we have Brett Milburn, who is a Davis County Commissioner. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time. I know this isn't at your leisure, but it'll be a good conversation nonetheless.
Just at somebody else's leisure, I'm sure.
Exact. I'm going to start with you, Lee, as to how important it is for you to get input from these guys when you are working on legislation.
Well, as a member of the House of Representatives, one of the titles that's right over the Speaker's desk says Vox Populi, which is voice of the people. And in order for us in the House to do our job right, we have to be in touch with the people. And in order to do that, you have to reach out to county officials, city and mayors, and reach out to the citizens as well. But these folks in the county are as close to anybody in our communities as we can get, specific to law enforcement and the things that go on in individual counties. And I represent 2 counties, Weber and Box Elder. So I have to reach out to my commissioners in both areas, the sheriffs in both areas, and along with the mayors and city council. And it's critical because otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we're committed to do, and that's to represent the people.
But there would be an argument that would say, okay, well, if it's Vox Populi and you're representing the people, your constituents get in touch with you, they complain about something, and then you respond and build a law. So aren't you fulfilling your obligation there?
I am, but quite often they'll go to the sheriff or the commissioner and say, oh, this is something we got to fix. And sometimes it's not something that can be fixed just in the county level. It has to be fixed at the state level, and then that's when we get involved.
So what happens? Does the sausage come out right?
Boy, and all the times I've had people come to me and say, that Lee Perry's got this all wrong. And I'm just teasing, of course. Yeah. And Lee and I have a lot of things we discuss, and we occasionally look at things differently, right, and have different perspectives. Mm-hmm. But really on Lee's part, and really with all of our representatives of Weber County, I can't tell you how really wonderful they are, because they're open, they allow us to come visit with us, they let us sit down with us, and they get pulled in 1,000 different directions up here, particularly this time of year. And so what I've tried to do in my area is try to keep in touch with them all year long, right? I don't try to wait until, you know, the legislature's come and I need to talk to them. And so occasionally Lee may have accused me of being just a little bit annoying or obnoxious, because he gets emails from me all year, every week, sometimes several a week, because I want him to know what's going on in Weber County, what's important to us, and how can he make really informed and educated decisions here if he doesn't know that.
One of the recurring themes that has come up, is this a good point, one of the recurring things that comes up that I've heard a lot from counties in the decade that I've been working closely with counties and these programs is, you know, the legislature, you know, they will pass a new law and give us a requirement, and they look good because they cut their budget, and then we have to pick up the slack in our county revenues, and we have unfunded mandates.
Never happens.
Yeah. Just like it happens from the federal government. Yeah. And that's the trick, and that's where listening to the county officials, and hopefully they see these bills coming, and that's why we tell the public, as well as especially the county officials, watch the bills. There's a lot of them come up. I mean, I'm seeing bills even right now as a state representative. I'm like, wow, this is a bill that somebody's running. They start to get numbered, and I don't get to see them until they're numbered, until they're out there. So it can be a little bit of a shock for me to all of a sudden go, wait a minute. And that's where I reach out to Ricky Hatch and Marla Young, our recorders up there in Box Elder and Weber County, about things that have to do with election law. I reach out to the sheriff and say, Sheriff, how's this going to affect your jail? And Sheriff Thompson is by far one of the best sheriffs I've ever seen in the state for communicating with legislators. Like he said, he sends us emails.
That obnoxious thing I mentioned?
But it is. It's good. And I'm grateful. I work in law enforcement full time, and so I see a lot of the things, and I know a lot of the things that he's sending to me. But I can tell you, knowing my counterparts aren't in law enforcement, and the information he's providing to all those legislative leadership and leaders is critical for them to understand and know, so that when they hit the session and somebody throws a bill out, they're not caught off guard. So I love the communication we have, because it helps not get these unfunded mandates. Funding obviously is a big deal, and we're trying to be a fiscally responsible state. I just imagine that the pressure on the legislature from groups that want their own bidding and their own piece of legislation, some of it protectionist. I want to keep other people out of my trade and stuff. I just imagine it's a huge amount of pressure. How do you sort through it all? That's difficult. That's where I reach out to constituents, and that's where having expertise in the field comes in. It's having people I can reach out to and talk to, because on my own, it's just like I said, you can't know it all. And if I don't have good sources to reach out to, and that includes lobbyists. Sometimes they bring information to me that's beneficial, even though sometimes they're representing a need and they want to go for that specific need. Hearing from their side and then hearing from the opposite side is always beneficial to kind of weigh out. And the thing I always put in the back of my mind, what is best for the taxpayers and all the citizens of Utah? So that leads me to an interesting point, and all of you can pass judgment on this or put in your 2 cents worth. When you say lobbyists, the general reaction of people is that, oh my gosh, what horrible, despicable, scum-sucking people they are. But you bring up a good point, is that in certain areas they bring a level of expertise and connection
to things that might be a problem. Are they a valuable resource other than for campaign contributions?
I think so. I mean, I think that they bring information, and whether it's them themselves or they bring us the people that have the information we need, I think they do bring a value to the table.
And I think they're a conduit for a group.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a whole group of folks who, you know, Lee can't sit down with all of us. And so you have that representative, and yeah, a lot of times it's that lobbyist that can sit down and convey, you know, your interests and your concerns one-on-one with them, and there's some value in that.
Well, the importance that I find in the lobbyist, and I think the sheriff would probably agree here, is we still have things that we're doing every day in administering our respective offices back in our counties.
Yes.
You know, the county work still goes on, and that needs to be taken care of. We can't be down here every moment of that 45 days and addressing and taking advantage of, you know, these folks are so busy that you only get them in real quick snippets of time, and having that lobbyist here to convey that message and have them be here to walk these halls and be ready to convey that message at a moment's notice.
Necessary.
So you guys are thinking in terms of like the representative for the Sheriff's Association and Utah Association of Counties to help move those messages along. From a state legislator standpoint, I know you were interrupted getting here, and so I know how valuable your time is. How can this process improve with constituents and they're trying to access, and how the counties work with you? What would make your life better as a legislator representing them?
If people would look at the things before they come up, and that's the honest truth, is we realize there's lots of bills out there. Find out what your expertise and area is, and watch the legislative website and mark in there and say, hey, I want to track anything that deals with this particular area. And then reach out to us and let us know. And know that your county officials are watching out for this. So if you see it and you say, hey, maybe Representative Perry won't respond back to me. I try to represent him and respond back as best I possible, but I also have, you know, not everybody may have my phone number, but I guarantee you Sheriff Thompson does, the commissioners of Weber County do. Exactly. So they have my ability to reach me, and they're good conduits. So if you see it, reach out to the sheriff, reach out to the commissioners, reach out to those leaders and say, hey, we got to get this message to Representative Perry that this is a big deal to us in Weber County, Box Elder County, Davis County, wherever we are in the state of Utah. That's a great conduit.
Can I give you an example of that? Mm-hmm. So we've got an organization in Weber County that is absolutely critical to us, and we think goes. As far as I'm concerned, my 30 years of existence in law enforcement, there's no other organization that does more for the demographic that we deal with. Our past offenders, and getting them back on track and addressing that recidivism. It's called Cottages of Hope. Now, to most people, and I was a little skeptical years ago when I first heard it, kind of sounds generic like other places. This group does more for our community, and we could do a whole segment on it. But what they do is they have all the community resources under one roof. A lot of these folks, even if you got resources, you can't get them there. We get them through one door, and we deal with everything from financing, budgeting. We get them into some really good pay, not just minimum wage, some good jobs, and we get them. You know, we work on their tax returns that many haven't done for years, their credit scores. We get them into transportation, housing, and then we plug them in. We have good relationship with adult probation and parole, Weber Human Services, Midtown Clinic, people helping people, and we bring it all under one roof. I mean, it's just unbelievable what they do for folks, and Ogden's a unique community, and they do more for that community than you can possibly imagine. And we got this from the Bay Area, which is an area that, you know, if something's going to work, you're going to find out if it's going to work there or not. It's phenomenally successful. So I brought all my legislators together, most all of them, and Lee's very familiar with it, brought them all together last week, set them down, brought them all up to speed, and said, here's the problem. They've primarily existed off of funding that is passed through federal funding state grants. Mm-hmm. That for some reason, and we don't know why, is starting to dry up. Well, who's the guy that's going to figure that out, or who's the folks that are going to help us figure out where the problem is to keep this funded, because it is so critical to the community? Lee and other state representatives. They're the ones that can dig into it and help us provide that ongoing funding to keep it effective. And so that's just a good example of how I could work with my local officials, bring them together, sit them down, bring in those folks, have them run up give them a good up to speed. Here's what's going on. This is what we're doing. We're saving the community and the state millions by getting people back on track and productive and contributing.
How can the legislature, and not necessarily an individual representative, but as a system, help you be better informed to get things pre-planned a little bit better? You know, bills surface all the time and they just appear out of nowhere. They don't really see them in interim committee. Is that like the biggest problem constituents and counties have, is not knowing what guys are thinking about doing?
It boils, in my mind, it boils down to a simple thing. It's communication and having the relationship. And I think generally speaking, you know, speaking from a body perspective, it's there, but folks get so busy and you're running a million miles an hour, and sometimes they might not think to bring somebody in or whatever, but just keeping an open dialogue and having trust with one another and being very candid on issues.
Gentlemen, this has been a great conversation. Hope it's helped you at home. Thank you for joining us for this part. We'll continue by taking a personal look at what it takes to actually navigate the legislature from a legislator's perspective when we come back. Get your track shoes on. Welcome back to the county seat. We've gotten ourselves up to speed and had a really good conversation. I would like to add that if you would like to see the long form version of the conversation we just had on the show, you can go to our website, you can go to our YouTube channel or our Facebook page and watch the entire conversation we had with the sheriff, the commissioner, and the legislator. Right now, we wanted to let you see the personal side of what it takes to make the legislature move. So we decided to put a secret camera in behind one of the state legislators on a typical day early in the session before it gets too crazy, just to see how busy and what it is they do.
I'm Kevin Stratton. I represent House District 48. That's Northeast Provo, Northeast Orem, and the east half of Linden. Good to see you, always.
See you. Here we go.
Yeah, so we're only 43 and a half days left now, yeah. I'm on the road at 6. We have some coalitions and caucuses, generally by 7 o'clock, and then we move into committee meetings. As we begin the session, we begin to set the tone for the 45 days. Our legislative session at 45 days is the shortest in the nation, yet we have the best managed state. And so we're running very, very fast as we go through that process. We need to make sure we establish a good foundation rhythm to build upon. We work on our budget. That's the first priority. We started the day in some caucus, some coalition meetings, great different stakeholders and issues related to the family, issues related to social concerns within our state. There's a great foundation to build upon, and the things are taking place there. And then we have our appropriations meeting. The first thing that we do as a legislature, it's our first order, is to balance the budget. And so we have, beginning of the session, fairly intense appropriations hearings. Right now, for example, it's our goal by the end of January to have our base budget completed. We really scrutinize how we're spending the money now to make sure that we're effective and efficient in all that we're doing, take care of what I say, every penny. Now we're going to the House floor to take care of some daily business. We'll potentially hear a few bills. We're moving bills out of drafting into signing in the committees and then passing some of our legislation over the Senate as well. I had several meetings with individuals on legislation I'm working on, others with some of the agency heads that I chair in the Natural Resource Environment and Agricultural Committee. We don't want to punish certainly the very thing that we value and desire. And we can do that sometimes with the policies. So thank you, Mr. Chair. This afternoon there's more committee meetings, appropriations meetings, and standing committee meetings. So we just need to be prepared to answer those questions and give an accounting for that.
Yes.
Recognize, especially in the House, we are the voice of the people. Government is not over people, but government is by the people. And in order for us to govern, all three plus million of us in the state of Utah, we need to have a good understanding, good transparent communication on what's taking place and the directions that are being pursued. It's such a smorgasbord of just fascinating issues, certainly. But behind those issues are people and people's lives. And so it's really the relationships and interacting with wonderful, the great people of the state of Utah and those that are seeking to promote the good, the things that are there. We have everything that we need. We can recognize certainly what we've been given, the stewardship that's before us, and we build a wonderful foundation for the future, those that are here and the rising generation.
I don't know about you, but right now I'm feeling like I need to put on running shoes just to keep up. Anyway, we will be back with our closing thoughts here on the county seat in just a minute. Welcome back to the county seat. Let's recap our show so far for this week. First off, we learned the relationship between the counties and the legislature and how the mechanics of that all works in our tutorial. Then we looked at some of the examples in our conversation of how it has done well and where we've missed the boat in certain examples of the importance of counties working together with state legislators. Then we took a personal look at how much work actually takes place in a very short window of time up here by following a state legislator around for half a day. And I point out that was only half a day. So what do we take away from all this? There's one element in the process that's still not being dealt with, and that is you and me as citizens. We rely on people to make best decisions in our interest when legislation is being passed. But we do have access to the legislative process, and it's just like the political process of electing people. We complain about the problems in our electoral process and in our legislative process, but we ourselves do not get engaged until it's just a matter of a slogan, a phrase, or a concept. It's really important for us to be more engaged in the beginning levels of this, to actually go onto the legislative site, like Representative Perry said, and as citizens, take the time to try and understand the impact laws have before they're passed, and make our contributions and our thoughts. These guys are all, at the legislature, lay legislators. They are not professional policymakers. They are law enforcement officers and attorneys and salesmen and housewives in some cases. They're just the entire spectrum of population that do their duty to try and pass laws and represent you. Your input is very important. That's my 2 cents worth, is we need to get more engaged. You can go to the Senate site, you can go to the legislative site at the utah.gov, and you can start the process of learning more. Thank you for being with us, as always, on the county seat. Remember that you can share us on social media, you can interact with us on social media during the week, and you can follow the county seat on Facebook. We'll try and give you updates of things that are happening during the week as news breaks. Thanks, and we'll see you next week on the county seat.